Coming up on Mount Hermeneutics, does God change his mind? And does man's free will change outcomes? Well, open theists seem to think so. And we're going to talk about that. So keep it right here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck.
I got like 3 hours of sleep last night, so I'm
Hey,
probably
look,
not going to be as
I don't know if you
charming.
need to slap yourself in the face real quick and
Punch yourself in the balls, do something.
No, I don't think either of those will improve the quality of this experience.
Would for us.
remember that Mount Hermeneutics is free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. And if you're watching the video right now, that's exactly where you are, YouTube. And or I don't know, maybe we loaded it to something else.
Maybe we're on Rumble.
Maybe we're on Rumble.
Ooh, maybe so.
Maybe we're on Blue Sky.
That's a distinct possibility.
It is a distinct possibility, and I'm thinking we're gonna get a lot of hate mail, and that'd be awesome. But
we just love the attention. So
if it's your first time with us, I'm Andre. That's Matt. This is Brian. Fellas, what's happening?
Gentlemen, how we doing?
Hey, Dre. Hey, Matt.
Man, we're doing well.
Yeah.
So I met two Chaldeans last night.
Chaldeans,
speaking Aramaic to each other.
like from Babylonia.
Yes.
Nice.
They still exist?
That's why I was looking at it like this. You're from where? And you're who? And you're speaking what language?
You're like,
and it's funny because the dude next to them was
you're
Persian.
like, then I'm awake. We're very confused.
And he's like they're I only get about half of what they're saying. I speak Farsi and a little bit of Arabic, and they're not speaking either. So so that was fun.
You spoke Farsi and Arabic?
I do not. The guy that was next to them told me.
Oh, okay.
That he was.
I missed it.
What do you think? I'm Sean.
I zoned out for a key part of that conversation. I guess. Sorry.
There was like
all 10 seconds of it.
Yeah, like you zoned out at the 3-second mark. That's interesting. But yeah,
it's been a long day.
What's going on? What's going on with you? What'd you do this weekend?
That I did this. I went to church yesterday, and
it's like 6 weeks in a row.
Something like that.
It's nice. It's good streak.
That's a hot streak.
I like it.
Fire.
Yeah, and
he's on fire.
And I did some other stuff. Just
nice.
Normal stuff. Just stuff. Cool stuff, but it's cooler in the doing than the telling. So what about you?
Dre, what'd you do?
I worked a neuroscience convention. Security for neuroscientists.
At first, you just say, I worked at neuroscience convention. I'm like, yeah.
As one does.
As you do, right?
Gave a couple lectures.
Right.
Look, keynote.
It was interesting because they had like
moved the needle a bit on
what they called a poster session. So all these people came in and hung up the posters on the wall, and then their professors came up and a lot of students, and then there was like a grad school fair, and it was lots of keynote speakers and a whole convention hall used up by a bunch of scientists.
Was Amy Farrah Fowler there?
I did not notice her at all.
That's a shame.
But she'd probably blend in there though.
Probably so. Yeah, there was not a lot of fashion going on, not a lot of hairstyles or makeup. Lovely people.
Was
sure.
Dr. Mike there?
No, I wish.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
So let's see. I went to my second Marine Corps ball of the year. The first one was better. This one was okay. It was shorter, so that's nice.
And you remember them both?
Yeah. So this was my most sober Marine Corps ball to date because it was Saturday night and I had to get up at 6:45 to do sound check at 7:30 at the church.
Mm.
So, you know, there's
Everyone can read lips, Matthew. So,
I'll have to cut that for sure.
but yeah.
Um,
What just happened?
my house is empty and Carrie just pulled into the garage and Harley just started barking because
Oh,
that's what
okay.
she does when somebody pulls into the house.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it was really loud.
It was an appropriate reaction, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not mad at
Yeah.
her, but she's got to
Right, yeah.
stop. Like the freaking
So
on
she
air
knows
lights
you're
on.
serious.
But was I saying? Oh, I had to get up early, so I had to be up super super early. It was my second week in a row to play guitar at the church, and I didn't, and I only had like 4 days advance notice. So I know I'm not yet a comfortable, accomplished guitar player because I'm not willing to play hungover.
Oh, you're not even close then.
Nah, I'm trash.
You're not a rock star status at all. That's the only way I
So
could pass a Morse code test. So it's like,
yeah, so I had to get in bed early and make sure I was hydrated and whatnot. So I had a 2 drink limit. So that was my first time to do that at a Marine Corps ball.
I did have my second grandbaby over the other night,
Oh, nice.
and because her parents were at a what you got a loose tooth?
Speaking of the first grandbaby,
Yes. Is that your first loose tooth? Heard it here first, everybody.
wow.
Little Layla Bean's got her first loose tooth. Right. Thank you. All right. So she was supposed to be she always goes to bed at 8:30,
Hmm.
but it was 9, and I'm like, let's watch another movie. High-fiving. Because for a little while she was laying down and she was on Delani's lap and she looks at me, he's like, is she sleeping? I'm like, not even close. Like I felt dead weight. Like her eyes were like boink and just having fun. I'm like, let's give her some sugar. Let's just mess. They got church tomorrow too? Yeah, hell yeah. Let's
Introduce her to coffee.
Right.
not introducing my Mormon daughter's baby
Oh,
to
that's
coffee.
true. That's
So
like
Mm,
like
that's
I'll do weird grandpa
that's
stuff.
how you get anathematized.
Yeah, exactly right.
that doesn't count. From Mormons can't anathematize you. That's
They do.
that's how
They
you know
do.
Mormonism isn't true, because they can't anathematize.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean they don't think they can.
Mm.
Much like you think you can, and yet you can't.
Or
I just
or
I just did it.
or do they have enough free will where they can?
Good segue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good question. What is free will? What does that mean?
So
What is
so
what is the meaning of life?
So in a few years ago, was it a few years ago? Yeah, it's a few years ago. Our friend Matt Moore here, he introduced me to a thing called Open Theism, and I kind of dig it. It's fun. It's interesting,
It's awesome.
and so there you go, there you go. So I think this is going to be one where I only chime in a little bit, and I get to not be on the side of the heat today,
Yeah.
and I
So, I mean, we've talked about this. If anybody's, been longtime listener, uh, if you've, God help you if you paid attention to everything we've said, but we've certainly slid this in just conversationally here and there. Um, we have a lot of topics that, we want to bring up and talk about, and then we, try to find the right time to do them and that kind of thing. And this is one of those where I've honestly drugged my feet on talking about it because I know I will find myself in a position of trying to defend something that I'm not sure I fully believe myself. But there's enough to this that I can't dismiss it out of hand. And I think that's part of it. I certainly have mentioned this when we've talked about the problem of evil. Anytime that we've had kind of the bigger, more philosophical kind of theological conversations, this kind of creeps into the where my mind is and where I go to and kind of how I reconcile some concepts. So I guess let me try to open with
What is open
yeah
theism?
what it is, and I'm not sure. Well, I'll try my best to just describe it broadly without getting into, the real specifics of what I believe or not. So let me kind of preface with that. Um, I, Everything that open theism stands for or suggests, I don't necessarily agree with. But in a big picture, I think the easiest way to describe it is to kind of to line it up against kind of some of the other models also, right? So classical theism is kind of the standard. And then there's open theism, and then there's like Arminianism, and then there's Reformed Calvinism and that kind of thing. And they all kind of sit in some different spaces. There's nuances and there's some overlap, et cetera. But basically what we're talking about is God's nature. And does God's nature, what does that mean? Who is God is really at the core of open theism slash classical theism, right? Um, so classical theism suggests or contends or believes that God is eternal, unchanging, and omniscient. It's kind of simple, right? Like God knows everything, God sees everything, God knows everything before it happens. And there's lots of verses that support this, right? So I'm not coming into this saying that that's wrong, right? I think some of the most obvious verses are, that God knew you while you were still in your mother's womb being stitched together. God knows the hairs on your head and, knows the
All the days ordained for me are
right.
written in
So
your
there's
book
all
before
of
one of
that.
them
And
came to be.
clearly I don't think that there's any reason to think that having a different point of view makes those verses untrue, right? So open theism suggests that God knows all possibilities, but not the choices that an individual will make. So to get into the deeper part of that, the way I see it is it really comes down to free will. So obviously, the Reformed Calvinist point of view, they don't necessarily believe in free will at all, right? Because everything's predestined, preordained, that humans are just playing parts in God's bigger play that He's already decided on and knows the way it ends. There's further branches like process theology, where they think that God actually learns and changes as decisions are made. Open theism doesn't necessarily go that far, at least to the extent that I've read it. And again, like I said, part of my preamble is that I'm not presenting myself as an open theism expert, subject matter expert, or champion, right? But the key points that I pulled on, or the thread that I started to tug on when I was exposed to open theism, and I guess I should give credit to William Hasker as the author that I read, that kind of made me go, wait a minute, I never thought about it that way, right? Um, there's an interesting conversation about free will that listeners might even be, you might have seen Neil deGrasse Tyson has done quite a bit about there's no such thing as true free will. It's impossible. And he sciences his way around it, that at the end of the day, there's no true free will. You're just bouncing around in the particles of the universe, whatever. But it seems to me, and this is just Matt, this is just my reading of the tea leaves. And I realize what a heretical statement that is. I kind of said that as a pun intentionally. If God actually knows the way a person is going to decide and act, that actually invalidates free will. Because free will is the concept that you're free to make a decision and there's nothing that can change or alter it. And that's really where the core of my constant return to open theism as a broad format, right? So having said that, I certainly don't think that God isn't capable of knowing those things. So, Matt, what does that mean? How do you have two things that are kind of opposed concepts? God either knows everything or he doesn't. or you have free will or you don't, right? What I believe is that God, in his own abilities, suspends a certain bit of his omniscience so that we have genuine free will. I don't think it's about his incapability or a limitation of his power. It's more a broader expression of his love and greatness that he blocks his own ability to know and affect certain decisions that we make so that we can make our own decisions and come to him on our own. So that's basically my version of open theism. And I'm sure a true open theist would disavow me and say, that's not right, Matt, because it has to fit within this nice little neat box. And I'd say, yeah, I don't really care about your box. So that's my starting point. So Brian, you want to dive in on that, or do you want to respond to my framing of the discussion?
Well, I am not an open theist. I reject open theism. But my understanding of open theism is that it's God is omniscient on open theist terms. That is, God knows everything that there is to know, but it's predicated on what's known as a theory of time, and basically that
It's capital A theory, not like a theory for
yeah,
listeners,
it's not a theory, it's a theory
as opposed to B theory. Yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to B, C, or D theory. A theory is basically that time is a single point. The past is gone, the future doesn't exist yet, so there is no future for God to know. Therefore, God doesn't know what choices people are going to make. And it's the purpose of it. It's to solve the supposed problem of reconciling God's sovereignty with free will. The reasoning for open theism is that if God knows the future, and he therefore knows what choices everybody is going to make, and according to open theism, therefore there is no free will, because if God knows you're going to do it, that logically precludes that you could make any other choice.
Yes. And I agree with that, by the way. That problem statement,
Yeah.
that resonates with me. I don't know how, like I'm surprised that doesn't resonate with everyone. Just the problem statement, not that he doesn't know. Not that he can't, like, for me, like for this conversation, right? Like put a pin in what he can or can't do, right? Because I'm 100% unwilling to start limiting God's capability, right? The trick for me is omniscience is a human term that we created, that we're using to try to describe God's nature, right? And I'm not suggesting he's not omniscient. I'm suggesting that he has the ability to filter and control his own omniscience.
My problem with open theism, the two main reasons that I reject it is first of all, I don't see that as a problem. It's yes, if God knows what choices you're going to make, then it logically entails that's the choice you make. The problem, the fallacy of open theism is that it it logically entails that, but it doesn't cause that. There's no causality between God knowing what choice you're going to make and you making that choice. It doesn't change the fact that you are making that choice. And you can see this from a human perspective. If you give your kids choices and you know them well enough to know what choices they're going to make under what circumstances, that doesn't negate the fact that they are making those choices. They're still choosing of their own free will to go a certain way. You didn't make them choose it by allowing them that choice, or by being able to guess accurately what they're going to choose. And your level of accuracy in knowing what they're going to choose in no way forces their hand to choose it. So the problem itself that open theism purports to solve doesn't really exist, but the bigger reason is that it makes God himself subject to time. Um, we know we know from physics that time is a physical property of the universe. Time and space are fundamentally the same. We also know from the book of Genesis that God created time. That's what the first day was when God said, um, let there be light. And God separated light from darkness, and the light he called day, and the darkness he called night. And then on the fourth day, he separates light from darkness again by putting the sun, moon, and stars in the sky to be for times and seasons and years. It's clearly conveying that time is something that God created. God exists beyond time and is therefore not subject to it. Um, and I think this implies B theory of time, which is that time is a line. But you know, it doesn't. I think it implies that, but I don't think B theory or C or D necessarily has to be true to establish the fact that God is not subject to time. It's still something I think he still knows the future, even if it doesn't exist yet, because he knows the present and he knows cause and effect and he knows what choices we're going to make. But I do think that the scripture suggests that there is a future for God to know, because God, whether you think God set it all in motion and has planned it, or it exists, I happen to subscribe to B theory, which is that time is actually I subscribe to D theory, but I don't want to get into I don't want to get into too many rabbit holes here. But the point is that God exists beyond time,
Mhm.
outside of time. And so to him, the distant future is just as present as the now, as is the distant past. So it does exist for him to know, but even if it doesn't, it's still the idea that God is experiencing things within time along with us, and he's finding out with us what choices we're going to make. That makes God subject to time, and to space, and it kind of turns God into like the nature gods of paganism are they exist within the universe. They're or at least as they're conceived of, they're just another object within time and space, just as we are. But God is not just another object in space. He's beyond time, space, matter, and energy. So he's not subject to any of it. To try to put him in time is to kind of it really makes him less than God. It makes him a finite being who is subject to time, and that I don't see a way to reconcile that with the scriptures. But
Dre, what do you think?
Well, there was a lot said there, and
Yeah.
I actually think that time is the is the important factor here. It has to do with it's relational, right? So if we have time and humanity and we have a relation to God, then that I could see how that sort of goes with Matt's theory of suspending that so that we really could make our decisions. But I think if you deal with things perfectly, right? So I don't know if you're subject to time if time is I mean it would have to be that time was created and not just there, right? Is time eternal like God? Is God himself time? Okay. Um, but if you know all possibilities and outcomes and you can deal with it perfectly on the spot, just like Brian's uh, illustration with being a father, and um, if you know every single outcome, then you can deal with it perfectly. I wish I wish I could. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
so one of the notes I jotted down, and Brian, when you made the comment about, you kind of know your children ahead of time, whatever, and I had two thoughts. One, often you can do that, but
yes.
kids are funny, and you can set up a really simple, bad choice, good choice. And once in a while, your kid's like, you know what? I'm picking this one just because I know it's going to piss you off. And I made the note that as they get older, that's more likely to occur, right? Like when you got like a 4-year old, it's like, hey, do you want to go to Chuck E. Cheese or do you want to go home and take a nap? Like it's pretty obvious what the kid's going to pick, right? That's not hard to do. But I had one of my two kids that as she got older, I'm not going to tell you which one I'm talking about. Um, I could contrive a scenario where one of them was clearly bad, and she would look me in my eyeballs and go, I choose that one.
That's
And
some
then dare me
defiance.
to not follow through with all of the other parts of the scenario, right? So like, that can happen, but that
Well,
but that's
eh,
but that's a clear example of free will in the
So,
point that I'm trying to
and
make,
and
right?
of course, you're not omniscient.
Of course.
But the strength of the analogy is that you don't have to be omniscient for the illustration to hold. It
Most of the
holds
time.
The illustration holds all the more for somebody who is, if you're talking about somebody who is omniscient,
Sure. Yeah,
like you can,
absolutely.
so
but
can God
But
be in time
well,
and not bound by it
that's
and experience the time perfectly? So I think I don't think you're subject to time if you experience it perfectly because you
well,
created it.
for one of the things that I saw, and this is just I was actually trying to be a good debater or a master debater, and I was trying to like read what are the counter arguments and like what's the big stumbling blocks and all that kind of stuff, right? And I see two words that come up over and over and over again, is that um, classical theists fall into the word they fall back on the word anthropomorphic, right? And Brian, you were all over it, you just didn't say anthropomorphic, right? That to have all of these opinions of what God is and isn't makes him human, or it's us attempting to humanize him, and he's not. He's so big and different that that's not there. But the open theist point is that everything that God says in the Bible is that he wants to have a relationship with us, that he's trying to relate, right? And that's the point. And that my theory, my hypothesis, whatever it is, right? My position is all premised on that. It's all premised on he's doing everything he can to be as relatable because he wants to have a relationship. And if he sits up in the ether and is this big, impossible, awesome, impossibly awesome thing, we can't relate to that because we're not, right? Even the angels, right, the watchers, etc., they clearly had free will, and some of them chose to go against him, and they were there with him. They could relate to him at a level much closer to him than we could. Not that they're
yeah,
the same, but they were
but
closer to him than we are.
I- there's one big thing I forgot to point out, that kind of relates to this, but open theism is primarily a philosophy about the nature of time, with
I think so too.
implications,
Yes.
yeah, with implications for theology. But like I appreciate that you keep contrasting it with classical theism, because it does require a departure from classical theism to embrace open theism. But within
Sure.
classical theism, to address this question of, and by the way, I don't see anything you said as a refutation of the anthropomorphizing rebuttal. Yes, God is sort of limits himself in his interactions with us so that we can interact with him. But there, like long before the incarnation, um, well, I shouldn't say long before Philo of Alexandria. There's a guy named Philo of Alexandria. He was a Jew who lived at the same time as Jesus, but he lived in Alexandria, Egypt, and so he never met Jesus. But he
Hence his
was
last
a
name.
right. Well, hence his. It's not really his last name, but yeah, I know what you mean. His.
We've talked about Philo before.
I think we talked about him last week after the show, but we weren't like after we stopped
Oh no.
recording.
Okay.
I don't think it was not on the show, but so it's it's fitting that we're talking about this
Yeah.
now because
You
now we
guys
can
were
talk about
gypped.
Philo.
We talked about Philo last week and you didn't see it.
But we're gonna make up for it now.
I feel more bad for Philo.
Philo's like,
I can't get on the show.
you put that punk ass Irenaeus song.
Well, now is this time because I'm going to talk
That's
about Philo now because so he was y- you guys are familiar with logos theology, and for the listeners,
Pretend I'm not.
okay.
huh?
um the logos, it's the Greek word for word. The opening of John's gospel where it reads, in the beginning was the logos, and the logos was with God, and the logos was God, and he was with God in the beginning, and through him all things were made, and nothing was made that was not made through him, and the logos became flesh, and he tabernacled among us. And it's it is, on the one hand, it's a reference to a figure who is typically identified with the angel of Yahweh in the Old Testament. Like you have God
And the
speak
god
to,
of and the god of Samaria. Sorry,
huh?
never mind.
Um, so you have when God is talking to Moses about when Moses God threatens to not go with the people of Israel into the promised land lest he kills them along the way. And Moses pleads with him to go with them, because if they're not your people, then then what was all this for? And so God relents and agrees to go with him, and he says, "I will send my angel with you, and my name is in him." And basically treat him like me. And then you see this figure, the angel of Yahweh, who refers to Yahweh in the third person. And Yahweh refers to the angel of Yahweh in the third person. So and this is where you get the two powers in heaven debate that Michael Heiser talks about. But in Samuel, you have if who is someone who is clearly an embodied figure appearing to Samuel, who is called the word of Yahweh. And you also have in Genesis where the word of Yahweh came to Abram in a vision, like he saw the word of Yahweh. So it's not just a word from Yahweh, a message came to him, but it's a distinct figure called the word of Yahweh, who is most people identify him as the angel of Yahweh. So he's Yahweh, but he's distinct from Yahweh. He's like the second person of the Godhead, basically. Um, put a pin in that. Meanwhile, in Greek philosophy, the Stoics came up with this idea of the logos, which is the word. Um, like developing Platonic and Aristotelian philosophy about the first cause, about the 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 one God who caused the universe, understanding that because he's beyond time and space and matter and energy, he is distinct from the universe, but his mind, the divine rational principle by which the universe exists and operates, that is accessible. That is immanent in the universe, and it's called the Word. It's kind of like a divine go-between. Philo of Alexandria basically argued that Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle had access to the Torah, and they were basing their ideas about the first cause or the unmoved mover on Yahweh. And basically addressing the questions that we're addressing here about how does a transcendent eternal God who is beyond time and he's invisible and has no form or material. How does he interact with the material world and relate to mortals? Well, the answer is the logos, the second person, who's sort of like the his avatar, for lack of a better word. I don't, and it's not even lack of a better word. Avatar is the right
It's probably
word.
the right word. Yeah.
It just has bad connotations because of Hinduism, but it is a pretty good word for what we're talking about here, in that
So,
it
so he
that it's
wasn't blue or anything?
um probably he was not blue, no.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
It definitely wasn't blue. So you
thank you.
can,
Thank you for that because I was worried.
I don't want to get
He was really
anathematized.
tall.
Um oh, you were making it like a James Cameron
There you go.
Avatar
Yeah.
Yep.
reference.
Also, Anunnaki are also blue and tall.
I was thinking of like Hindu. See, the
And Hindu
confu
is also blue and tall.
James Cameron based his giant Smurf people on Hindu deities being depicted as
Oh,
blue.
it's
Um,
kind of obvious too when you watch it.
yeah.
I just thought it was
Um,
Dances with Wolves, but in space.
It was Dances with Wolves meet Ferngully.
yeah. So Philo's, was addressing that question with logos thea, and kind of set the stage for what became logos theology within Christian tradition, which is that the Word of God is he is God, but he's distinct from God in the primary and absolute sense because he's God in time. It's kind of like God writing himself. It's kind of like if William Shakespeare wrote himself into a play as a character, um, except Shakespeare can't project his consciousness into the world that he's created.
Mm-hmm.
God can. And so you kind of have this, you kind of have all of these questions anticipated in the Old Testament itself, where you have the eternal God referring to his messenger, the angel of Yahweh, in the third person, but it's still Yahweh, but distinct from Yahweh, but there is only one God.
Mm-hmm.
And so so yeah, like all of this is sort of.
Well, and
And
this thread, by the way, this is part of the point that I wanted to bring up. So everything you said, I agree with. And
awesome.
then we jump forward to the birth of Christ, right? And you know, every Trinitarian will agree that Christ was fully man and fully God, right? That's not
Right.
50-50. He wasn't kind of sort of one and kind of sort of the other. He was all God and he was all man. But part of that being man, right? Christ wasn't real time big God. He wasn't God actual. He was God forward, right? He didn't have all of the omniscience of God. He asked questions. He was genuinely asking questions. He wasn't walking around a rhetorical
Totally
robot,
agree.
He
right?
And
he was he was
and he
in time, in his own time.
Right,
and he
right.
wasn't walking around like, holding the Milky Way together
Correct,
with his
correct.
Right.
mind.
Right, right. Because he is capable of being in
Yeah.
two powers in
He's
heaven, all
this.
that. Agree with all of that. But so for me, the fact that he's able to do it when he's in a human form means he's able to do it, right? And he did it as Jesus so that Jesus could experience the earth as a man,
Wait, back up. He when you say did it, what did what?
suspended his godness, his omniscience, and all of the other parts that made him God, even though he was still fully God. Like I'm trying to be
All
very
the
careful.
unknowable things that we can't fathom
Right.
of
I'm
God.
I'm trying to be very careful because this is a heretical tightrope, right? And I think this is important to be clear on. I'm not over here saying he wasn't really God. He didn't really know this stuff, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying God purposefully insulated himself while in the form of Jesus from some parts of his Godhead, right? Like he said, I don't know how it works. I don't know how he did it when he beamed himself down onto the alien planet. And I'm using the Avatar reference now, right? He only gave himself so much of his abilities through, however that works. Like,
Well,
and to sit
let
here
me
and I don't want to try to unbundle this because we're going to fall into a
well
Trinitarian
let me help you out
black
here. Like
hole.
I think I can
I don't.
I think I can articulate this in a way that you'll
Okay.
agree with and that will make your point. I don't think that Jesus had any divine powers in and of himself.
Right.
He was God in his character, in his soul. Did he have a human soul and a divine soul? I don't think we know what a soul is,
It's
but
not worth the rabbit hole
it's
right now.
but
Yeah.
it but I think the Gospels and like the hymn that Paul quotes in Philippians 2, um, though being in very nature God, he did not consider equality with God a thing to be exploited, but made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore, like because he humbled himself and submitted to death, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow. So like I don't he wasn't walking around. It's not like in the Quran or the infancy gospel of Thomas where he's going around like making birds out of clay and bringing
Right.
them to life and
Right.
or committing like miraculous pranks on people. He was empowered by the Holy Spirit at his baptism that in the same manner that any
Yes.
perfectly faithful.
And we've said that on this show before. And
Yeah.
sorry, I cut you off. Somebody might not have seen the other shows. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I don't believe he was. Yeah, so he wasn't walking around holding the galaxy together with his head. He wasn't
Right.
walking around like doing like thinking about quantum mechanics and uh, just with omniscience about the
Hmm.
universe. He was a man. He had only as much all of his power as the Messiah was rooted in his perfect faithfulness to the Father and his
Yeah.
sinlessness.
And
Can you?
that's the key. And we've said that before. It's worth restating. To
Yeah.
say that with even less words, every miracle performed by Jesus, with the exception of coming back from the dead, could be recreated by any person that has the Holy Spirit in them.
No, I don't. I think the point of the gospel is that was not an exception. Um, like that was a preview of what awaits all of
Oh,
us.
Yeah,
right.
right,
But
right.
we not in three. My point is not on
Great, yeah.
demand, right? Like
Greater works than I. You.
sure, sure. But all of the other stuff, and I think the thing with Peter and the water and walking on the water was the best example of that, right?
Yeah.
Where he said, "Come out here, you can do this," and he started to, and then you don't believe enough, and he fell in the water, right? And he was like, "Freaking
Yeah.
dummy, get up out
And
of the water." I feel like
regarding
that one story
That's
is
probably where he got his nickname, Peter.
it,
That was the
rock.
spot.
He's like, you freaking rock.
Can he swim with a name like Rock?
I was I was trying to work that in there, but
That's good.
yeah.
But I feel like that little verse doesn't get enough attention for what it's trying to tell us, right? Like I think that's exactly what it was telling us is look, you could do these things. Like I'm not unique. You just don't have enough you
Well,
just don't have enough perfect faith and you haven't got yourself to this level, but you could. Anyway,
um,
anyway,
yeah, and
the
so
only point of that, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. Back to how that relevant to open theism in my mind.
I do want to say something about the broader subject though that I think bears looking at. I think I don't I think we should be okay with the mystery of whatever tension there might be, which I don't think there really is any between God's sovereignty and our freedom of will. Um, I think we should just be willing to accept that there are certain things we can't understand. Um,
Roll
but
credits. Show's over.
I think these are good conversations to have. But I think I think if we read the scriptures and take them on their own terms, we establish beyond any doubt that God is absolutely sovereign. He is
Sure.
omniscient
Yeah.
and the entire and you find this theological point being reiterated. And I brought this up before, like the very name Yahweh, the way that it's used and the way that it appears kind of it's invoked as part of a formula whenever there's a prophecy about what God plans to do in the future. When this comes to pass, then you will know that I am Yahweh. There's something about God's sovereignty to bring about the future that he plans that's tied to his very nature and name, his transcendence over time. That is an absolute that you get from scripture. And two, God takes our choices very seriously. He's grieved. He's like deeply grieved when we sin. He hates sin, but he takes our choices seriously. He lets us make our choices. He implores us to make the right choices. So our call it free will, whether it's compatibilist free will, as Calvinists say, or libertarian free will, the bottom line is God is not making the choices for us. He wants
Agreed.
us to make the right
Yep.
choices.
No,
Our choices matter.
no, I agree. No,
Um,
I think it's funny that, for a topic like this, where, like I said, my suspicion, and I'm super curious to hear the comments, right? Because I'm curious how many people have even heard of this conversation point, right? And if you have, the minute you saw the title and you clicked on it, were you like, oh Lord, like what are they going to say? Who's an open theist? I find it interesting that, because I agree with what you said earlier, Brian, that there should be some willingness to just accept the fact that there's just an awesomeness here that we can't possibly fully understand, right? And the fact that we want to dig through it, right, is kind of the point, I think, right? That the attempt to understand it. I think it would be foolish to become so wildly entrenched in a specific side of this that a person wouldn't be willing to talk about it or to think about it or to have a conversation about it, right? Like, because like I said, as I was trying to open with this, I'm certainly not a dyed in the wool open theist, right? Like, for me, the time thing isn't even relevant. I mean, Dre, you brought that up, and I agree with you that they talk about it a lot in their material, right? The authors that have written a lot about open theism, there's certainly all of the timey-wimey stuff going on, right? For me, it's just more about the free will portion, right? And Brian was throwing out those phrases, and I'm certainly a libertarian when it comes to free will. I'm a libertarian as an American. I'm also a libertarian as a Christian. So,
so maybe I should define those.
yeah.
I, I just think that we that there's lots of examples where intervention causes God to change his mind. I think this is how I kind of see it. Like, remember those old choose your own adventure books
Mm-hmm.
when we were in grade school? But in this choose your own adventure book, the end is always the same. So you can either go in as the crow flies, if you will, by pure faith, or you can read that book and get to recess in 3 minutes, or you can take 10,000 years to go here, there, and everywhere to get to the end.
Bro, that's a great analogy.
That's just kind of
It,
how I see it. Like,
is that are you is that your are you making a case for universalism here?
I'm making a case for free will.
What Dre's
So,
suggesting is that no matter how many choices you make within the book, God's ending will still be how the book ends because he has set that as the end state, right? God's kingdom will come, right? The Edenic rebirth of the earth, paradise, etc. That's the last book. That's the last page
but
of
if
the
you but
Right.
book.
if you keep flipping the stupid ass pages and not doing the right thing, then you're not going to get there, and you're never going to get the cool icy pop at recess, right? You're not going to get the square piece of pizza, right? By the time you get there, you're going to have nothing but peas left, and that really sucks,
And white
right?
milk,
So,
no more chocolate
I
milk.
I agree that the end state, like the universal end state, is what God planned for it. But there is the question of whether any given individual gets to participate in that or is excluded because of their own choices.
Yeah, the Choose Your Own Adventure book isn't
that's what I said.
individually written. It's the book, right? And Matt's part of the Choose Your Own Adventure book might end because I made a bad choice, and it's like, well, off to Sheol you go.
Sure, sure.
Shit! I
Yeah,
didn't
so
want
the
to go
whole
down.
book, correct? Yeah.
Let me start over again.
Matt's feeling me.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I just like.
And how about the times when God makes a plan and it's always and it's conditional, like, hey, I'll do this, but you got to do that, and they
I
either
agree.
do it right or they don't.
Yeah.
Right. So if
if
it's conditional, and that means we have free will, and we could have made it right, but we didn't make it right. So why would God make a condition that he knows that we're not going to choose properly?
And
I can't wrap my head around that.
because God wants us to love him like that.
Right.
Like, I mean, the bottom line that you like, the thrust of the first few chapters of the Bible, of the book of Genesis, is that God put man here to be his agent, to through whom to rule. Like, we have to have agency in order for that to be legitimate. Why did God do that? Well, why? I don't know. Why did God do anything? Why did God create a universe that is distinct from himself? Because he wanted to create something that is distinct from himself. But he created it to be his temple. Like, he wants this world for his dwelling place through man. For that to work, man has to have agency, which means man has to have the freedom to reject God's plan. So if we have that freedom, wherever there's freedom, and this is, this is a universal constant that applies to everything: religion, politics, relationships, morality. Wherever people have freedom, they're going to make different choices from each other. And many will simply choose to reject God despite his best efforts to persuade them otherwise. Um,
And that's why I think that my Choose Your Own Adventure book, not necessarily individuals, it just gets longer and longer. And when an entity like Satan and his demons, they understand they cannot win, but they can prolong this book forever because
Amen.
because he knows that we suck.
And that's
right.
That's where my version of open theism comes in. Because if we were let's keep this book analogies, I think it's a solid way to visualize
and God's like,
it.
I got nothing but time. I am time, homie.
Right? Yeah.
I wouldn't say that God is time, but I agree with the rest.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that God didn't want Adam to eat the fruit.
Correct.
God didn't want the Watchers to descend to Mount Hermon and take human women. He didn't want humans to
make the Tower
avail
of Babel
themselves of the forbidden knowledge, or like, none of that was something that God preordained to happen.
Correct.
This is what came of free moral agents making choices. And I really think that we might be on the cusp of another such rebellion with AI, and
so I
which
agree
might be its own show.
We should come back to that. But I agree with everything you said, Brian. And that's, to me, that was when I was reading William Hasker's book, and everything you just said is kind of how he starts the book, right? And he says, and the thought process was, it's a really stunning mental leap. Not take God out the equation, right? That's just humans looking at this, right? But it's really hard to comprehend a perfect being that makes a universe, makes people, makes all, Genesis 1, 2, 3, right? And then knew that Adam was going to eat the apple, right? Like, that's the point. Like, when you get to that very first inflection point, and then, in the Bible, it says in Genesis 6 that God repented making humans.
Well, okay, that that bears some examination, because
Okay.
that's like that's
Yeah,
a
let's examine it.
that's the English translation.
Agreed. Yeah,
And
the
and
Hebrew is Nicham, Nicham.
yeah, like
That's the
it
Hebrew.
doesn't, the Hebrew itself does not, it's not, it doesn't denote changing the mind, like like repent. The word repent in the New Testament comes from the Greek metanoia,
Agreed.
which literally means to change one's mind.
Agreed.
That is not what the Hebrew
Right.
word means.
It means regret.
Well, it means to grieve. I mean, it doesn't, it's not, the word itself does not denote a changing of the mind, in the sense that, well, I was going this way, but now I wish I hadn't done that. It only denotes the emotional state of this deep, this this grieving.
Sure.
How, you know, how that reflects on somebody's actions, or regretting them or repenting of them, that's a different question. And it's really a bad, translating it repent is really the
I
wrong move.
I'm none of the different versions or interpretations of that word to me changes the impact of the event. Like the changing his mind or
Well,
not. Like no, I'm being serious. Like
well, but that's
I'm
the
not
only
dialed
point that
in.
I'm pushing
Okay,
back on.
yeah, that's fine.
Like
But
it's
regardless, if it was disappointed, if it was sad, if it was unhappy with the outcome, right?
An outcome that
One,
he knew.
that exactly. One, first of all, it 100% invalidates any Calvinist reformed concepts, right? Because why would a supreme deity create a scenario that makes them unhappy? That's just stupid. Like it's just genuinely dumb on its face. So,
yeah, honestly, like, to be like, I agree with you, but I feel like all of this debate between open theism, or we haven't talked about middle knowledge or
mhm,
Molinism,
right.
which is I, I think I subscribe to that. If I had to pick a position, that's what I would subscribe to. But like
You
all
want
of
to
these,
define that a little bit for the listeners?
Molinism is middle knowledge, which, like, it's God knows every choice that we, not only that we will make, but what choices we would make in any given circumstances. And
Mhm.
like, you see this, like when Jesus says, "Woe to you, Chorazin and Bethsaida! If the miracles that were performed in you had been performed in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented and sat in sackcloth and ashes and remained to this day." Like, he is, like, reflecting divine knowledge, that had somebody like Jesus, or a prophet who did the miracles Jesus did, had they gone to Tyre and Sidon, they would have responded and not been struck down. Um, which doesn't change the fact that they were guilty for their sins, and they made the choices they made, and they deserved what they got. But God knows the amount of grace that would lead any given person to repentance. He doesn't owe it to anybody to bestow that level of grace. Um, but that, that doesn't negate the fact that they are making the choices
Mhm.
they are making, and deserve the outcome that they get.
Sure.
So that's Molinism, or middle knowledge. But I kind of think that the shortcut to resolving Calvinism would just be to read the proof text that they use, and just read them on their own terms, without Calvinist presuppositions, and see that they don't really teach the things Calvinists claim they do. Like, I think we kind of do all of these, go through all of these philosophical exercises to resolve things that would be much more easily resolved just by, like, reading Ephesians, and looking at how Paul is actually using the word predestination in that context, reading Romans 9 through 11 to see how, like, Calvinists are abusing that. But that's probably a different show. But I think that's worth noting as we're kind of batting around these concepts.
Sure. No, and I mean, the funny thing is I have no aversion to Molinism on top of some of the parts of open theism, right? Like you made the comment earlier, and I think it's fair that there is some of this that's just impossible for us to understand as mortals, right? And I think you could probably feather together a lot of these different precepts, little bit of this, little bit of that, and the mosaic starts to fill in a little bit.
Well, I want to amend that a little bit. It's like it's
You dumb
not.
bastard. It's a sailboat.
It's a schooner.
I want to amend that a bit. Like I don't think these questions are actually that inscrutable, but there is this there we do, you know, Christians do have this, not just Christians, everybody, we kind of have this need to, if there's a mystery there, we can't accept it. We have to kind of
Uh,
resolve it in our own head.
Protestants
And
more so than non-Protestants, in
Or
fairness.
keep chasing it.
Eastern Orthodox are super comfortable going, it's a mystery, and moving on. But they
eh,
really do.
well, but that's sort of, I think they're erring in the other direction, really.
I didn't say it's the right way. I just said they're
Yeah.
super comfortable with it.
But I think people tend to, they tend to come to conclusions on these things it, early on, and they kind of camp out there, and they kind of
For sure.
build a worldview on it,
For sure.
and then they get dug in, and they won't move off of it because they base their identity on it.
The first liar wins.
Yeah.
No, I'm being serious, right?
No, I get
completely disconnected. I was just having this online conversation about music, about guitars, and musicians have opinions and whatever, right? And this is relevant. So give me 2 minutes to make a point. There's music theory. There's certain laws to Western musical structure that are just real things. There's 7 notes. There's scales. Like these are they're not up for debate within Western music. There's this whole camp of guitarists that will fight over the belief that some of the greatest guitarists of all time didn't know theory, and they just instinctively knew how to play really pretty music. And they're talking about guys like Jimi Hendrix, and these people will basically refuse to learn real musical theory because, well, Jimmy didn't know theory, so I don't need theory. Well,
yeah, you have the same thinking in like art circles.
Yeah.
Like art, art doesn't have rules. It's just expression. Yeah, but if you don't learn like the
the basic fundamentals, like how light works and how to use shadows, and exactly.
Yeah, if you don't, if you can't take the time to learn that, you can express all you want. It's still going to suck.
Yeah. Ask that Austrian painter.
Yeah, it's same with dudes that throw 100 miles an hour or hit a baseball, right? Like, yeah, your swing looks funky, but there's still fundamentals to it. And if you don't execute those things, then you're
exactly.
not. Stop it.
Yeah.
I get it that those guys look different.
And we brought 3 different nerdy topics and made it analogous to what we're talking about. That's impressive. Our listeners are just blessed to have us around to bring this kind of insight.
And I mean,
discipline is the key to freedom and excellence in all things.
I like that. I dig it.
Yeah. So, I mean, is it frequency? Is it volume? I mean, how do you really get hypertrophy?
Right.
Hypertrophy. Sure.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think we could probably sit and nerd out on this topic for a very long time. I don't know how much or what to explain more about it.
I feel like there's some meat that would benefit our audience that we've not gotten to yet, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is, again, going back to, I'll throw this out. I'm not gonna sit here and rattle off all the verses, and I'm certainly not going to read them all. Brian, you touched on a couple of events though. So just at a high level, Genesis 6, prior to the flood, the scripture says that God repented making man. Um, Dre,
Well, hold on. It says he was grieved making man. The English
it,
translation says he repented, but
the word, well, the word is nicham, and it's Hebrew, and Hebrew has the word has multiple translations. It's either relented or repented or regretted. That's what the Hebrew word means, and that's what the word is in the
or
Tanakh.
There are
So
there are 15 passages
right, and
in the Old
that's what I was getting
Testament
at. And I'm like I said,
where he
I'm not gonna
changes his
sit and rattle
mind.
them all off because I mean
Some of
anybody
them
can.
are the
I do,
same instance,
I
like
I do
Chronicles
want
and
to
Samuel.
explore one of those because
Sure,
I think it matters.
but I just want to point a couple of them out because I think they're the most relevant, right? Like I said, Genesis 6 is one. There's the two different parts where Moses talked God into not killing everybody, right? He
Yeah,
interceded, and
I want to elaborate on
yeah,
that.
that's fine. And then in Samuel, right, God repented, regretted making Saul the king. Um, then Judah, uh, God said, if you repent, I'll relent on destruction. There was the situation in with Nineveh where God was going to destroy a whole city, and but they repented, so He didn't. Right, like so. There's threads to pull on here, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't want to sit and just beat the verses to death. We certainly let's talk about a couple of them if you
Well,
want. But
there's a common thread that ties them all together.
okay, what is it?
Well, you like the incident with Moses, like
Hmm.
the he's first I want to look at Genesis because there's a pattern that is being set up here. You have before the fall, Adam in the garden. God says it's not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper. Will make a helpmate suitable for him. But he doesn't do that immediately. The first thing he does is he brings all the animals to Adam to see what he will name them. And then Adam himself discovers, hey, there's no helpmate, there's no helper. They're all paired off. I'm not. What that's not cool. I don't have a suitable helpmate. The next thing Adam knows, he's
And he has all
waking
that
up.
testosterone.
Yeah, and he's waking up from the deepest sleep he's ever had, and there's a smoking hot naked woman there. Um, like we don't e- like based on the text, we don't even know if Adam had a chance to consider, hey, this is a problem. How can I solve it? He just recognized the problem, and then he's waking up, and it's resolved. And like so, God establishes this precedent where if you've got a problem, if there's anything not good, I've already thought of that. I already have a plan. I want you to notice it first. I want you to understand it, and then I will meet it, and you can have that. You can have that understanding of our relationship. So there's that. Um, you have a parallel situation with Israel when Moses is on the mountain. He's getting the instructions for the Ark of the Covenant, for the tabernacle, for the priesthood and the priestly garments. Basically, all of the like the everything they need for a system of worship for Yahweh. Meanwhile, the Israelites are on the foot of the mountain and they're saying to Aaron, "Hey, we don't know what happened to where is this guy? He's been gone forever. Um, make us gods to go before us." Like they humans need a kind of a tangible focus of worship. We need at least we need some kind of visible concrete concept of God to which to direct our worship. God knew that. He was providing for that at the very moment that the Israelites were feeling their need for that. But rather than trusting him and waiting for God to provide that, they did the opposite of what Adam did, or what Adam might have done if he had been if that had happened in his fallen state. They tried to solve the problem themselves through corrupt, sinful means that wound up being a betrayal of God. So anyway, you had this pattern of God knowing what we need before we do, and already having a plan in place. It's just a matter of whether we'll trust him. And so bringing us to Moses interceding, um, God's going to wipe them out for doing this, because he made a covenant with them and then they immediately broke it. Um, and I think he would have wiped them out had Moses not interceded. But the whole point of that was for Moses to act in the place of priest, of the mediator between God and his people. And this is one a prototype for the priesthood that he is about to establish through Aaron, but in a broader sense, a prototype for Jesus. And it's a model for all of us. Like the whole point of God's redemptive plan is to turn every human who turns to him into a royal priesthood, into a kingdom of priests, into a kingdom of people who act as God's agents and intercede for our fellow man before him. So
It's solid. And we're back on typology again, right?
yeah.
No, I dig it. Yeah.
So I think it did change God's mind, but not like in the sense that not in a sense that he didn't plan for. Like the whole thing was a setup
I,
for Moses to have a role to intercede as a
so,
model for all of us.
so I hear you. Okay. And I say this not at you. Okay.
Give me
So
both barrels, man.
no,
Let me have it.
I'm not coming at you. I'm coming at this. You are describing this properly from that position, right? And I get it. To someone that is on this side of the fence, that sounds like such a wild circular point, right? And I'm not coming at you personally. So I'm trying to prevent any kind of red-faced anger that might entail.
Well,
But this,
I'm not going to take it
but
personally,
to say, but when you say, right, he changed his mind, but not in the sense that his mind was really
Right.
changed. He knew his mind was going to get changed,
No,
but it
that's
still
not what I
changed his
said.
mind.
It
That's
sounds
literally what you said.
it sounds like God is Judge Dredd. Like I knew
That
you'd
that's
say
Brian,
that.
that's precisely what you said. You said
Right.
not in the way that
No,
he didn't know it wasn't going to happen. He knew his mind was going to get changed, but his mind got changed.
no, I think if Moses had not done that, I think he would have followed through on what he
I
was going to
agree
do
with
to
you.
Israel,
I agree completely.
but we'd have a different Bible
Yes.
in which he started over with Moses, and at some point in that nation's future, that nation would have rebelled, and one of Moses' descendants would have been the one to stay. Like,
Right.
but it's
So so
So
so
to
can
to to,
so
to
so
Dre's
can God
point,
have two plans and it's like, hey, Moses, choose your own adventure.
Moses. No,
Go
I
Mo
think it's back to your
and
choose your own
and then
adventure. Like
but
more
then
pages would have had to get added if Moses hadn't
and
yeah.
convinced
also
God
So
not to do it.
so is that I mean we
so
intercede for each other
I,
all the time with prayer. Every time something
yeah,
happens, you have my thoughts and prayers, right? So why are we doing that if we're not trying to intercede or trying to get God or some mercy or like what's the point of praying for someone?
he wants us to
Love one another to I mean,
yeah, he wants
right.
us to be his priests.
So if we're not his priests, what does he do?
Um, well,
So in my
there's always somebody who's going to be a priest.
so what I'm asking is there conditions for things to happen? Like he has a plan and there's conditions that we have to follow through to get to this plan. Or we don't pass those conditions and that plan doesn't happen at that point in time or in space. So the plan gets moved or the plan or a different plan has to take place. Like God has to start over with Moses and a new nation, right?
Well,
So
I think God has a plan, or but yeah, I think God has a plan, and you can and that the foundation of that plan is seen in Genesis 1 and 2. And I think you could basically collapse Genesis 1, 2, and 3, and then the book of Revelation into one narrative, and you'd have kind of the complete plan, and all the stuff in between is precisely because humans keep making the wrong choices.
So it could
But
have been
it
4 books and not 66.
could could have been.
That's
But
my analogy.
It would have been one book, just Genesis,
yeah,
like
Just
just
yeah,
one book.
I agree. Like I think
it
God
could have been
has
three chapters.
I think God has his plan, and he has backup plans, and backup plans. There's backup plans.
Contingency plans
The
and
the question is whether we are going to be faithful to his first plan,
Yeah.
or
so
and
to,
so yeah,
so
I'm not I'm 1,000% agreeing with your choose your own adventure thing.
so is God of the Mike Tyson, everyone's got a plan to get punched in the face. Not that we punched God in the face, but
I think it's our faces getting punched by our
we're punching each other in the face
yeah.
because we're not following the actual plan because we got punched in the face by the Watchers,
I think we got
the
punched in the
serpent.
face ultimately by ourselves. Um,
Well, I mean, we made a choice.
What's the old like Vietnam quote? It was like plans never survive their first contact with the
Contact,
enemy.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
something like
is
that.
that did that start in Vietnam?
I feel like it.
I feel like that probably started with
With
Sargon of Akkad,
with
or
with Alexander the Great. I yeah yeah yeah. So I think we didn't survive first contact with the spirit. I mean, with the serpent.
Right.
you know, this is I think I've said this before, but it's worth revisiting. Because it's a small detail, but it changes the whole thing. Um, like go back to when God brought all the animals for Adam to name them. God had given mankind dominion
Mhm.
over the earth, over all the cattle, creeping things, living creatures of every kind. Adam was God's image bearer, the ruler of creation. And naming things is that is an exercise of authority.
Hmm.
Fathers name their children, like you read in the Old Testament, a common practice when Nebuchadnezzar conquered Judah. He deposed King Jehoiakim and installed his brother Mattaniah in his place, and he renamed Mattaniah. You're going to, what was his name? Zephaniah? I think he renamed him Zephaniah. But anyway,
Doesn't sound very imaginative. What a jerk, this Nebuchadnezzar.
but the point is, like, it's kind of like when a conqueror goes in and tells the king, "Hey, you're not going to be go by that name anymore. You're going to go by this name."
Right.
It's kind of like I'm your daddy. It's that kind of
Oh,
thing. It's like I get to rename you because
so
I'm
that's why
I'm in
Adam was the
charge.
first Melchizedek.
No, I disavow. But the point is, Adam had authority over the animals. That's what, so he was naming them. So and the point of all that is when it says that now the serpent was craftier than any of the other wild animals of the earth that Yahweh had made. This is right on the heels of Adam naming all the animals. The serpent was one of his subjects. He was subordinate to Adam. Adam had all of this was a subject coming into the court of a king and deceiving him. And like we often think of the serpent as Satan and all of his glory coming in and kind of bullying this puny mortal. And
Right.
that really misunderstands the power dynamic there.
Of
Like,
the priest king Melchizedek.
I stopped doing that.
Okay.
No, it's not the priest king Melchizedek. It's
Do it as a
it's
haiku,
Adam.
Dre.
I will do it as a haiku myself.
Um, but Yeah, so the point is, like, man was always in charge, but abdicated it by our sin. And the entire point of God's redemptive plan is to restore us to that authority. And so any theological system that downplays or denies or buries our role as the uh, the rightful rulers of this world like Calvinism, which treats us like unworthy wretches, even after salvation. I was in church this Sunday, and one of the Bible, the Sunday school teacher made a remark about what unworthy wretches we are, and I think that misses the point. Like the whole point of it is to restore us to that authority, and so we ought to relish that and embrace that and reject any teaching or theological system that undermines it. So
That's
that's my
the that's the whole point of Timothy Alberino's book Birthright,
hmm.
the
Well,
theological Indiana Jones.
so hang on though. Yes and no, Brian. I, I, I agree with you that broadly, if we don't hold at some level that we are supposed to be, and we are the intended heirs of God, right? Like I agree with you. But at the same time, like it was in James when there's the conversation about the two men, or is it in James? Might not have been, but there's the two men. One's a Jewish tax collector and one's a Pharisee, and the Pharisee's like pumping his chest about how I'm super holy and I do all these things and I'm
Thank God I'm not like this tax
exactly
collector over
that
there.
verse. And then the tax collector's like, I'm a broken sinner and I'm not worthy. And then the follow-on was the second guy was more worthy than the first guy, right? Which is kind of
Sure.
like those memes that go around, I'm sorry, God, that I'm retarded and stupid and I'm a sinner and kind of thing. And it's like it's almost over the top with the effusiveness of
The meekness of
the
yeah.
self-deprecation and all that. So I think I think your point was we need to stop being so self-deprecating and reclaim our rightful place as the image bearers of the Most High. But that requires one to get all the way down to the bare bones first and go, before I can reclaim my place, I have to acknowledge how
Well,
broken I am and how my sinful nature, and I have
yeah,
to address that.
absolutely. Like,
I didn't
but
mean to
to
turn this into a sermon. I'm sorry. I just thought that was worth stating.
well, yeah, I agree with everything you said because it doesn't contradict what I said.
Well, no, I wasn't contradicting you. I didn't think I was.
Um,
Oh, so as long as it doesn't contradict you, like it's
I
okay.
was just clarifying.
well, you were saying yes, but no, Brian.
I was saying I
That
wanted to add to it to make
all
sure
right.
that somebody that heard you didn't take it too far the other direction. I was trying to
Well,
save you from heresy.
sure.
Some guy walk around,
Um,
I am king. Bow.
but
Yeah.
Kneel
before,
before Zod.
well, the thing is that 2 points here. One, when Christians talk about what unworthy wretches we are, um, that's perfectly true of us before we are saved. If we are saved, if we put our faith in God through Jesus Christ, we are justified by that. And Paul says that our justification on those terms is no different than righteousness under the law. It is no different than if we kept every requirement of the law. We are righteous. We're justified by faith, first of all, and on that condition, we are imbued with the very Spirit of God. Like we have Christ in us as part of our own nature. So it is entirely inappropriate. I would say a blasphemous denial of the gospel to be a Christian and still wallow in this unworthiness and and you it's when you're in a room full of Christians who think like this, they it's like they vie for dominance by being the most contrite over their
That's
sin,
that's
That's what
fair.
Matt was saying earlier.
Yeah.
That was the
which
you know what, Brian, I think that's the top 3 to 5 favorite things that I've ever heard you say.
thank you. I'm about to top it.
Mm,
As proud as you should be, like you are, like no genuine Christian has any business wallowing in how unworthy they are because you're a child of Yahweh. You bear the nature of the one true God. How dare you disparage your own worthiness? It's an insult to God. but it's the same thing if you don't treat every other Christian that way. Like every other Christian who is a Christian deserves that same level of reverence. You have to revere Christ in them as much as you revere Christ in yourself, as much as you revere Christ himself, because he is in them no less than you. Now, that doesn't mean when you see them behaving in a manner unworthy of Christ that you don't rebuke them out of love, but like it's at the same time it's as exalting as it is humbling, because you owe that same reverence to other
Yeah.
people who belong to Christ.
So technically and
Your
objectively,
other statement was better.
that might have topped it, but it's still not my favorite.
Nah, other one was better.
Yeah.
Well,
It was
Nice
all right.
work though.
It was all right.
Yeah. I mean, top 10 maybe.
well, thanks for
We'll slide it up there. We'll rank
thanks
it.
thanks for giving me a chance.
so so two things I wanted to say. One's directly relevant to this, and the other was just kind of, I wanted to try to put a little bow on this. Um, in fairness, right? One of the things we didn't do is we didn't really get into oh yeah, well, this verse says that. So in full fairness and, transparency, there's a verse like Malachi 3:6, pretty simple sentence. I, the Lord, do not change. So that's kind of, that's there. And we have to accept that, despite the fact that we were kind of in agreement that Moses convinced God to change. So, like, what do you do with that? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it goes back to, what does change mean, right? Does it mean what Brian was saying about changing from the primary or the secondary, right? Like, is he talking about his nature or his decision making? Like, I don't know. I don't know what to do with
I mean,
it.
his character
it,
and purpose are constant, and
Right.
his love and justice and faithfulness
Right.
doesn't change, but plans
Right.
adapt.
And obviously,
yeah,
I didn't
But
go pull the context around Malachi 3:6, right?
right.
So I don't know what was being talked about before, because don't take a verse out of context, right? Kind of thing, right? So who knows? We could go read it. I think this topic is
it's
wildly
a great
fascinating.
passage.
Yeah. Yeah. But I just meant this topic broadly, right? Like this whole show, like tonight's episode, I find this topic to be really, really, really interesting from a discussionary point of view as much as anything else, right? Because like we could probably sit here and have this conversation for another 4 or 5 hours until we're just like falling asleep, right? Like it's one that I think we could chew on and chew on
and
and chew on.
and we have done things like that
Yeah.
before.
So
So
the other thing I want to do, just to put a bow back on the early scriptural word that Brian was kind of pushing back on, the repent word. The definition or the pronunciation of the word is nakam, is how it's pronounced. It's Nacham. And in Strong's Concordance, I guess, yeah, Strong's Concordance, the number one definition of what that word means is to sigh. To breathe strongly, which is really funny because then
it's like enemies
God
of
just
Apple, and
goes,
God goes. He's a Ben Affleck mean without.
yeah, yeah. It's just, I mean, obviously it's not a funny topic, but
Right.
the thought of that is just like, God's like, these
Yeah, and I
people
think
again with these people.
and I've been camping out in Leviticus a lot lately, and it's like we're talking here about how God is grieved, like he's
Mhm.
like, and it's in the to sigh, it really conveys like this deep, heartfelt,
Mhm.
like
Yeah,
inconsolable grief. Like
yeah.
God is like heartbroken over our sin, but also in Leviticus where it talks about there's a lot of wrath there. By the way, like Leviticus is inarguably the most neglected book of the Bible. It is also objectively and frankly, inarguably, despite what what people's impulses might be, the most important book in the Bible as well. It really is a shame that it's so neglected, because it sheds light on so many other things. But there are portions in it where it talks about how like God delights in his people. Like he, like it, like it, we bring him joy
Mhm.
when we're faithful, and and like that's really like it's something I can't stop thinking about lately. Just like the idea that God delights in us. God delights in me when I'm faithful to him, and he's heartbroken by my sin. And it's
So that brings up an interesting point. I like that, by the way, Brian. I think that's fair that we're focusing so much on the negative, but the
uh,
positive is just as important,
yeah,
right?
I want you to make your point, but I'm gonna
Oh yeah,
there's a
I was just
broader
going to
point that
say,
I'm
yeah.
leading to, but
And I know Brian is the outlier here, but in the world of sports ball fandom, that's part of the problem also. If you don't care a lot about your sports teams, then you don't care much when they lose. But if you don't care much when they lose, then you really don't care that much when they win. And you don't get the joy of watching the sports ball, right? Like we know Dre lives and dies with the Dodgers. For me, it's the San Antonio Spurs. Um,
I get it. I just
no,
don't.
I know you get it. But you don't
I don't
experience it.
directly
Yeah,
experience any
yeah.
of that because I can't make myself no matter how much I try.
And that's an important part of the calculus, right? The equation has to have good and bad on both sides of it for the equation to balance.
Or you're not a fan.
Right. And to the point that Brian was just making, like God's a big fan of ours. Like he wants to see us do all the things that he wants us to do so we can be together. And so he's rooting for us in a weird kind of like I don't kind of flipping that to a weird analogy, but like, God's watching us on ESPN up in the sky. Um, and he's exasperated a lot. He's angry, he's wrathful, he's happy, he's,
It's like, Matthew, pass the ball.
right. Yeah. Like all that, right? Like he's sighing at me. He's like, oh, this guy.
One more pass, Matt.
Yeah.
One more pass.
Yeah. So, but
Or
again,
Stop
shoot it.
looking at porn, Matt.
Or
I
shoot it
mean,
when
all of that has to come into
you were open.
this,
Shoot the rock.
but that goes back to, the free will story that we were talking about earlier, right? Is there has to be, if there wasn't free will, he wouldn't be tuning in to watch because he would already know how it was going to end. Right. Like the simple fact of him being interested in our activities is a direct indication of the fact that we must have free will. Otherwise, he wouldn't be fired up about it. He wouldn't get angry. He wouldn't be unhappy. He wouldn't be wrathful. He wouldn't be sad. He wouldn't be any of those things. He would just be because he is. So, Brian, what was your other point you were going to make?
Well, like a lot of these, like going back to the main topic of, open theism versus other attempts to explain like God's relationship to time and how he interacts with us and how an eternal being is, how how he relates to us within time, all that stuff. When I get wrapped up in those questions and I can't basically like the essence of those questions revolve around what God is. Like how do I understand what God is in relation to the universe and time and space and all that stuff? And I don't have answers. I don't know how, like he becomes a remote mystery to me that I can't reach. I can't relate to. Um but then when I think of who God is, which is the far more important question that's answered by scripture and by his sending his son to die in our place, by his reaction to our sin and to our righteousness, that he's grieved by our sin and he delights in us when we reflect his likeness, when we're his faithful children. I realize that the question of what God is unimportant. It's almost kind of answered by that, because when I'm considering what God is, like what is God? What is the universe in relation? Are we living in a simulation? Is he just some kid in his mom's basement in this higher dimension of reality? Um, and it like that affects my faith. That makes me that make that that wages war on my soul because it causes me to kind of doubt reality. But when I look for my anchor, for the anchor in the resurrection of Jesus Christ and how this validates the biblical narrative and how God's plan for history, you see it in the Bible, but in the Bible you see kind of the nucleus of history itself. You see God's plan playing out in the 2000 years since then. You see how our present times were foretold in the Bible, if not in specific prophecy, at least in the types and patterns and what it tells us about human nature. Like and then I understand, like, this is the very meaning of our existence, and that God really does delight in us and love us, and he has a kid in his mom's basement watching us in a simulation on a server would not be that invested and would not come into the world to suffer as one of us to redeem us. The life or death stakes of the gospel, of his plan, and just the fact that he delights in us, that he wants us to know him so much, and then he's so grieved by our sin. That tells me who he is, and it renders the question of what he is moot. But it tells me we're not in a simulation, um, that there are real stakes, um, and so much more that I could keep going on
Yeah,
about.
that's awesome.
I think that's kind of a mic drop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a great.
I think that kind of wrapped us right there.
Did we solve open
To be honest,
Yeah, it's correct, and you just proved it.
yeah, right. It's relational because that's who God. Open theism is who God is, not what it is, Brian.
That's. I mean, I think that's. Yeah, I think that's kind
Right.
of the idea. I feel like everybody else that came up with open theism got really close to getting it right, but they got it wrong.
I, yeah, I think the problem is they're trying to deal with what God
Hmm.
is.
Yep.
But
Hmm.
which by the way, those aren't invalid questions, but they're just not the most important
I no,
questions.
I agree, and they're also unanswerable to the point that you just made.
Yeah, they are.
Right.
Like it's an irrational use of time to try to figure that part out
He said time.
when you could be doing so much more with it. No, I think that's the deal. I would love to hear, get comments on this. If anybody's, got similar ideas or thoughts, or did we give you something to think about on this? Um, we've been getting a little bit more interaction on the YouTube. Love it. Thank you. But would love to actually dive into some of these questions. If anybody wants to, like, you know, bring us a question to a show, and if we could, maybe we need to give us a thought-provoking question so deep that we need to bring it up and do another show on it. That's the goal. That's the dream.
Also, if you are a Calvinist and you're just tired of us, like, just
What are the odds that there's a Calvinist out there that
yeah,
keeps tuning in to listen to us?
or they just hate listen.
They hate watch. That's
Oh,
what.
that would be awesome. That would be so cool.
But if you want to come on the show and tell us why we're wrong, we will be gentle. We won't I I hate Calvinism more than these two guys put together. I promise to be respectful, but I really think Calvinism is a major issue that needs to be addressed, and I feel like the three of us who are agreed that it's are agreed against it. I don't think that would be. I don't
I
think
don't
that would
I
be
don't think
terribly
you
worth.
hate it more than me.
No, I definitely do. I have depths of hatred that you can't possibly plumb,
Wow.
and most of
That's
it is directed at Calvinism.
that's not
Not
very that's
Calvin.
not very Christian of you.
Not no, it is. It's very Christians. I don't hate Calvinists. Some of my favorite people have been Calvinists. Um, but I mean, I don't think Calvinists are necessarily bad. I think they're just wrong.
Gavin
But
Orland has fallen out of my algorithm, and I think the algorithm can hear me. And I think it knows how much I hate Calvinists, so it's slowly pulled him out of my algo.
Yeah, I like Galvin
I
Orton.
like him a lot. I
I
think he's a
value a lot of what he has to say, but I
no. My
also
point is, I miss him. Like I miss seeing him
yeah.
in my feed.
And Vadi Bacham, I'm heartbroken that we lost him. Um, but I wish I could have.
He was so amazing socially
He was a
with
great social
yeah.
commentator.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he was a Calvinist, and I wish like I could have met
I didn't
him.
even know that because maybe I didn't want to.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But anyway, if you're a
Never meet your
Calvinist,
heroes.
That's right.
if you are a Calvinist and we would love to have you on, and you have our, you know, as God is my witness, I promise to be as gentle and considerate as possible to you as a person, but I will be merciless against the idea of Calvinism. But it'll be a good.
I'm having Brian's giving a Knight's Tale. I will eviscerate you in history. the the William Shakespeare character.
The
Yeah.
Geoffrey Chaucer.
Oh, is it Chaucer? It's Chaucer, not
Chaucer.
Yeah, Chaucer. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, other thing I was going to say, Dre. By the way, I think your analogy of the Choose Your Own Adventure book was really cool. It made me think of like the Adjustment Bureau as like a blend of that, right? Where
The Matt Damon movie.
where the guys are running around and they're changing the world so that it keeps pulling it back to the main storyline. Have you not seen
Oh,
that
I haven't seen
recently?
it. I
You
know.
should watch it.
No,
It's with
for
Matt
sure.
Damon and I think Emily Blunt is in
Yes.
it.
Yep. It's a
Oh, look at
decent
movie.
flick on its own, but Dre, if you watch it with this as a backdrop, you're going to be like, "This is." We just talked about this.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
I, I, I'm I'm fascinated that such a it's older, 2011, something like that, that you haven't seen it. Like, because usually we're
Yeah,
kind of
that is surprising. Yeah.
yeah. And it's a big movie. It wasn't like it was some little B movie.
It sounds like I was deployed and
Yeah,
just
must
missed
have
it.
been. So
Yeah.
you got homework.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
you're
Okay.
gonna dig it.
Apparently. Okay.
Everybody else that's listening, like these things link together. This is pretty cool.
I
But
think speaking of movies, and
before we get to the close, something we haven't been doing enough of as we wrap up the shows, like and subscribe to the Bloody channel. Like, for the love, help us out.
yeah,
Like,
Pretty please.
we want to
Cherry on top.
we want to quit our jobs and do this, and
we'll do it more
so
often.
yeah,
We'll do this every day if you people will help us
yeah.
generate income so that we don't have to have real jobs.
And they'll
And
be
just
like,
think,
will you do it shorter if you do it every day?
We'll
We
do
will,
shorter
yes,
and
we will.
longer. We'll do
But
both.
just
We'll do
think
like
of
a
how
quick hitter and then a super long one.
yeah, and yeah, just think of how awesome it would be if the three of us didn't have to like work.
I don't think that's the right way to motivate him.
Right.
Well, I mean,
Think about
you
how
know,
awesome it would be if we could devote more time to doing this in a more productive way, such so that we could bring more of this theological entertainment to more people. And you could be the reason we get to do this.
how's that different than what I said?
Perspective.
Don't know, Brian. That's quite a question.
Just really want to quit my job.
Right. I mean, who don't? Well,
Yeah.
okay. I'm just gonna say, we should probably just stay curious, stay enlightened, and the three of us clowns will see you next week. God bless.
Bye-bye.